Welcome to the Lost Boys podcast. I'm Tandy, and today we're joined by a new friend. Say hello, new friend.
Hello, new friend.
This is Harlan Fear. Harlan is a good friend of mine who used to play Magic with me way back in the day in the before times, but now is getting super into Lorcana, and we actually had a nice bonding moment this past weekend, and I think I found my new co-host for the Lost Boys podcast. Say hi.
Yeah, so Todd and I were hanging out over the weekend, and we were talking a lot about Lorcana, and yeah, we kind of just hit it off, and we've been friends for a long time, so we figured we'd give it a shot.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited to have you here. For those of you who are fans of Bomat Courier, I just want to say that nothing super bad happened to Bomat. He's going through some tumultuous life changes, and we decided it was best for him to take a step back. But we're glad to fill that role with Mr. Harlan, who is, by all accounts, just an insane Magic player. Why don't you tell the people some of your accolades from back on like the SCG Tour days?
So, I played SCGs for a long, long time. I started when I was probably 18 or so, 17, something like that, and played for a long time. Started to have a lot of success. Pretty close to, COVID era. It was like 2019 when I really started to pop off. But yeah, I have 5 SCG Open wins. I think a Classic win and a couple other their random like Team Eternal Showdown format wins and stuff like that.
Heck yeah.
A whole slew of top 8s, and yeah.
Yeah, I know me and you were on a team together with Ross Merriam in Indianapolis a few years back. And if I'm not mistaken, I've actually told this story a couple times now, because when I played with you in that event, I didn't realize that you were just like the first person to play Minsk and Boo in a Legacy event. And now Minsk and Boo is just like maybe top 3 Planeswalkers ever printed, and it was just brand new. I'd never seen it before. I thought Harlan was just playing his 4-color pile of junk.
Yeah, so Minsk and Boo was definitely a fun card. I definitely like to kind of go against the grain with everybody else, which is why I'm really excited for Lorcana. It's a new evolving game and format, so it opens a lot of avenues for me, to, okay, this is what everybody else is doing. Let me do this instead and get my competitive edge.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me specifically, it's been really fun just building new decks and trying out different strategies. I know that I've been using a lot of Pixelborn to play. Are you interested in Pixelborn testing? Have you been using Pixelborn at all?
Yeah, I'm actually almost exclusively Pixelborn.
Nice.
Yeah, I really I got latched on to Lorcana right about the same time as you did, actually. Like Gen Con weekend. I wasn't at Gen Con, but I was, really on Twitter that weekend and seeing all the hype around all the Lorcana stuff. And so I had downloaded Pixelborn and started playing. And my local store here does do a Lorcana League, but it's really popular here, so the product went really quick.
Yeah, I did.
Even though, our store is really good about not charging crazy high for it, but keeping it, so that they aren't just selling it MSRP. They're still making that bit and it's not getting flipped again. But they do restrict who can buy how much. And so I wasn't really able to get that much. So I've been almost exclusively on Pixelborn, especially when, a lot of my more competitive focused card gaming friends are, spread across the country. So It definitely makes it a lot easier.
One of the things we did playing on the SCG Tour and on the Pro Tour and Grand Prix and stuff for Magic the Gathering was we actually just grew a pretty strong friend group of players who are very good, but like you said, don't really live that close to each other. And we're all used to playing online games together anyway. And so playing Pixelborn, even though it's a little buggy, even though it's hard to like one-on-one your friends sometimes because of disconnects and stuff, it's been a boon for being able to just physically play games of Lorcana, especially with cards that I don't own yet and are hard to find physically. Stitch Rockstar is one that I have 0 copies of, and all of my Pixelborn decks have 4 copies of them. So it is what it is.
Yeah, that's been something that's been a little jarring for me in like local play when I do play locally, is people will be talking about how hard it is to get a specific card. And I didn't even know the rarities of all the cards because Pixelborn, you just have everything. So like the rarity doesn't matter to me. But yeah, as far as the program being buggy, it has its moments, but honestly reminds me more of Magic Online than anything else.
No, I'm in the same boat. It's like it's one dude with in a basement with a box of scraps, right? He's doing the Iron Man thing, and it's working. You know, there's more people in the Pixelborn Discord than there is the official Lorcana Discord, which is pretty wild. I know there's always people in there looking for games and stuff, and you know, we talk a lot about Pixelborn right now when we talk about Lorcana because it's just the most accessible way to play, and especially for those of us who are extremely competitively focused. And I'm really glad it exists. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be playing nearly as much as I am.
Yeah, I absolutely probably wouldn't be playing at all because I wouldn't be able to get cards, and you know, my friends probably wouldn't be that interested because they wouldn't be able to get cards.
All right, well, that's Harlan. That, you know, welcome to the show, and it's good to have you here. And we'll be, you know, a lot more smooth in our talks and stuff the more we get to chat and whatnot. But before we get into anything super deep in terms of competitive play, I want to ask you specifically a few things about Lorcana and like your introduction to the game. So you said you haven't been able to get many physical cards. Do you have any physical cards?
Yes, I have. So I kind of cracked the system a little bit for our locals early. Our local store limited you to 2 starter decks per person. Mm-hmm. So everybody would get, you know, one of 2 of them, one each. But, you know, me being the competitive person, I was like, I'm going to get 2 of the same one.
Oh, yeah.
And then my deck's going to be way better than everybody else's. So me and my girlfriend both each got 2 of them. So I have 2 copies of the Ruby Emerald starter deck and 2 copies of the Amber Amethyst starter. All right. That's pretty much all I have for physical cards.
So your deck that you're playing right now, what's your favorite card out of your double starter deck that you've built?
It's definitely the 7-cost uninkable Dr. Facilier, which is basically the best card out of the starters.
It's really powerful, and I noticed when I was playing with the Amethyst starter, if you didn't have Dr. Facilier, your deck didn't really do a lot because your characters are all just kind of small and don't quest for very much. And the goal, I guess, was to just get under your opponent and rush them with little things, but there's so few payoffs in the deck outside of just a couple Brooms and Mickey and the Dr. Facilier. You just get outclassed by the Ruby Emerald deck pretty hardcore most of the time. And even the other one, the Sapphire one, is not so easy to beat. So, yeah, I mean, doubling up, definitely getting 2 Dr. Facilier is the right move.
Yeah, absolutely. You also end up with 4 Brooms and 2 Mickeys as a result. So your deck ends up being, you know, it's certainly not on the power level of an actual constructed deck, but it feels like a good budget deck, which is great. That's high praises for.
That's what we need right now. Yeah,
Exactly.
Everyone needs like semi-competitive decks, and just smushing 2 starter decks together is a great way to do it. Actually, one of the Lost Boys, Zach Weaver, he's been writing articles for our Patreon. You might want to check that out. It's patreon.com/lostboyslor. But one of his very first articles that he wrote was how to get a better collection, like how to create a deck out of a small collection, including how to build your decks by just buying 2 starter decks. And it was like that plus natural upgrade paths whenever you can actually open some of the better rares for your archetype and things like that. Very useful early on for us when we were just getting started. Now we've all been playing Pixelborn. We're like, you know, chiseled stone or whatever. We are carved like the Greek gods. Our decks are 4 of every legendary thing, and no one's going to stop us. And once we actually physically get the cards, we're going to rule the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really, really excited to play Paper Lorcana against somebody sitting directly across from me with all the busted cards, and everybody just gets to smash their Elsas and their Maleficents and everything into each other. It's going to be great.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty of the competitive side of things. So since you've been playing so much on Pixelborn, I think the majority of your games are going to be against decks that are at least better than the average deck in person, just for physical card availability. But what is the color combination, or what one deck have you had the most success with so far on your Lorcana playtesting?
So definitely blanket most success has been with Ruby Amethyst, which probably comes to the shock of no one who's been following competitive results at all. I definitely, especially when I start my competitive process, I like to start with the default best deck, and learn everything I can about that deck, how that deck should be built if I do want to play that in whatever event I am playing, but also so that I know where it's at and how to play it so that I can start picking it apart with a new deck built to attack it.
So speaking of Ruby Amethyst, like you said, it is one of the best, if not the best constructed deck on the market right now. What about your build is specifically different? Is there anything that you've discovered that you'd like to share with the audience about how to build the deck or what you're trying to beat?
Yeah, so one of the first things I noticed with the deck is everybody is really high on the card the Queen, which I was initially too, just without playing any games.
Mm-hmm.
But the more games I played, the worse that card felt. It's a 5-drop that doesn't do anything the turn you play it, so it's really bad against Dragon Breath. Or maybe Dragon Fire. I always mix that one up.
It's okay. I do it too.
Yeah. It is a really big payoff in that, if you do get to go to your next turn with it, you get to start drawing an extra card every turn. But typically with a 5-mana or 5-cost play like that, you need it to impact the board more than just draw that extra card. So I find that it typically is just attacking a lot. And it is a reasonable body for doing that, but it's
4 or 5, right?
Not what yeah, exactly. It's 4 strength, 5 willpower. So it does tussle really well with against other cards, but that's not what I want to be doing with my powerhouse 5-drop in my mid-rangey control deck.
Yeah, I mean, look, it exerts to draw a card, and that's a powerful effect, right? Especially if your opponent doesn't have any characters on the table to challenge back. One thing that I do want to note is that it gets absolutely squished by Maui Hero to All in the mirror matches, and so you're going to draw a card sometimes, but you're going to give your opponent maybe the most prime, juicy target possible for their Mauis in a situation where normally Maui's not very good in the mirrors.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually is a huge baseline play pattern of the mirror match of Ruby Amethyst is how do you make your opponent's Mauis bad so that they have to ink them instead of turning them into a card or two.
Right.
And a big part of that is actually Shield of Valor.
Yeah,
Shield of Virtue.
Shield of Virtue, that card has been really impressive to me for a number of reasons, but the thing that gets me going really well is the fact that you can ready your opponent's bodyguard characters with it. When my opponent did that to me the other day, I was like, that card's a little bit better than I thought.
Yeah, and that's like a crazy thing that, we were talking this weekend and you mentioned that to me and I was like, you can do that? And like, I've been crushing with Ruby Amethyst and that just makes my deck even better, right?
Yeah, it just adds more versatility to a card that's already pretty good. And, we've seen the big questers like Ursula, using the Shield of Virtue to ready it so that it can't be challenged just means that you're just going to chew them up over the course of just a few turns. And on top of that, it just has extra utility for stopping bodyguards, things like that. So very cool card is Shield of Virtue.
Additional note, you can use it kind of like a ritual effect for your Be Prepared, where you
to sing. Yep. Very cool.
Yeah, so you get to quest with your Ursula, ready it, and then sing your Be Prepared for effectively 3.
All right, so my personal experience playing on Pixelborn has been just a ton of the low to the ground Amber decks playing Lilo, Stitch, Simba, Bodyguard, and also people playing Ruby Amethyst. Those are kind of like the 2 flavors of decks that I've been playing against a lot. And my builds of Amber and Steel that I've been playing are kind of geared versus one and then geared versus the other. And I'm trying to find a way to split the difference. And the one package that helps me attack the aggro decks is the Steel Tinkerbell package, which is Tinkerbell 3 and then Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, so that you can curve 3 into 4 shift and then use that to chew up the baby Lilos, maybe attack and kill a bodyguard and kill something else. And whenever I play those cards, though, I just lean pretty hardcore into my opponent's interaction so that their Mauis and things of that nature are just like way more punishing. Whereas when I cut Tinkerbell, I'm able to play things like Hercules 3-cost Steel Bodyguard, and other ways that are just like more protective. And I just lean super hard into the Stitch Rockstar plus the whole new world, just like card advantage package, where I just try to empty my hand as quickly as possible every single turn.
Yeah, that's definitely a super linear way to take it. You do give up some points in your, aggressive mirror matches doing it that way a little bit. I personally have not been super fond of the, hyper aggressive decks or even, baseline aggressively slanted decks. I, in my history with Magic, I've always kind of gravitated towards those more controlling decks, but I've always really had a fondness for attacking my opponent.
Yeah.
And I think that those aggressive decks, because we don't have the perfect kind of supplement of card advantage engines to go with them, we have these really hyper powerful ones like A Whole New World or Stitch Rockstar, but we don't have those. Like, we can't put 3-drop Maleficent in every deck, right?
Yeah.
You can only do that in Amethyst. And I think those types of things where you get to play to the board and generate an advantage, we haven't hit that critical density yet for me to really enjoy playing the hyper aggressive decks.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel you on that. So as far as the Ruby Amethyst deck is concerned, I know you've been playing with it a decent amount and figuring out your build, but is there any deck that you've been working on specifically that you think has a good shot against it?
Yeah, so my front runner at the moment for attacking Ruby Amethyst is actually Amethyst Steel. Steel is probably my overall favorite color in Lorcana. It does a lot of things that I really like. It has card advantage. It has removal. It has situational removal, which I like a lot more than things like Dragonfire that just, it's expensive, it's clunky, and it always does the thing. Yeah. I like having my more flexible cards that, it makes it more challenging, and that ultimately makes it more rewarding when you win. But I have really liked Amethyst Steel. You get all the same card advantage elements that Ruby Amethyst has, because Ruby isn't actually very good at drawing cards. It just has all the big clunkers. So you get Ursula, you get Elsa, you get Magic Mirror, and you draw all your cards. And then you, instead of having Be Prepared and Dragonfire, you have cards like Smash and Grab Your Sword. And you get to nickel and dime your opponent a little bit better. And I've found that it's actually a bit better against the really aggressive decks, because the Tinkerbell package in Steel is so much stronger against the really aggressive decks than even Maui is.
Oh, for sure. Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy just, scoops them up when you're playing against a bunch of one-cost Lilos that, just die to the trigger effect when it comes into play. And any other characters you have that are smaller, oftentimes in conjunction with just like one other character, allows you to knock them down. And that's not even when you get to shift. When you get to shift and attack, you just straight up destroy your opponent's entire board position when they're, just spraying and praying.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes Tinkerbell Giant Fairy so great, right? Is the shift mechanic. And one of the nice things about playing Amethyst with the card is you get to play Pocket Watch.
Pocket Watch with Tinkerbell is a special hell that I have not been introduced yet, and I don't really want to.
Yeah. So as soon as your opponent hits 7 with a Pocket Watch, all hell breaks loose.
It seems like. I know that my experience with Pocket Watch and was it 7-drop Aladdin that steals lore, that one has been pretty disgusting against my aggressive decks for sure. And I can only imagine how much worse Tinkerbell would be, because it just eats up more things as it attacks more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been one of the biggest draws for me to the deck, is you don't have to set up your shift all the time. Your late game Tinkerbells just have rush. So your opponent has to be super respectful of the ability that you have to do that to them. But then you also have Elsa, which punishes them in the opposite regard.
Right.
It sets them up for a nice little squeeze, which is really good for a deck like that. Honestly, the main reason, though, I like it is not that it just beats up on the aggro decks like that. It's that it actually, I feel, is a pretty solid favorite in the Amethyst mirror versus the Ruby builds.
That's interesting because I always thought, Be Prepared, Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon, these were like the reasons to play the control deck. But the reasons to play the control deck, I think, are actually the card draw effects, the 3-cost Maleficent, the Friends on the Other Side, Magic Mirror. And so when you pair those with things that just naturally have board control elements like Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy, or the stuff from Ruby that destroys characters, either direction you go, it's going to lend itself to the card draw package. And it just depends on like which one can empty their hand the fastest and utilize those extra resources, and how those extra resources actually affect the board state itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And with those extra resources, if you break it down on its baseline, Maleficent and Dragonfire, you end up just exchanging the resources, right? And the card advantage is what matters in the long run. And a lot of that ultimately comes from Magic Mirror and activating that multiple times.
Yeah.
And then using Pocket Watch to gain that additional tempo, or Shield of Virtue to get that additional attack in, or a quest and an attack, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things that really add up once you both have that card advantage. And the card that shifts that dynamic completely is Beast. 5-cost Steel Beast, 4/4, quest for 2. Absolutely destroys the Amethyst mirror matches, blowing up their items.
Yeah, there aren't very many cards in Lorcana so far that interact with items. I think there's 2, or at least that remove them from the table once they've already come into play. And 5-cost Steel Beast is definitely the best for doing that. It's inkable, which I love. 4/4 stats aren't the best, but it's still solid. Questing for 2, you can't really say anything bad about it. Anything that has multiple utility points and is inkable, I think, is just a slam dunk. And most steel decks, I think, at least the ones like mine is like really low to the ground, trying to abuse Whole New World and Stitch Rockstar, so I'm not playing them in my Amber Steel deck. But if you're playing like mid-range Steel, big Tinkerbell, I think it'll be perfect.
Yeah, Beast has been an all-star for me. You do ink it a lot, which is the point, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like if you compare it to Magic, where you have sideboards, right? You don't get to have a sideboard in Lorcana, but you do get to play these situational cards if they can be inked. So you can have this really powerful item hate card that if your opponent's playing a deck that doesn't even have items, you can either play a 5-drop 4/4 late in the game when you top deck it, or early on, you just ink it and you just didn't miss your tempo,
No, for sure. I mean, one of the most fun parts about this game is that even when your bad card, or not your bad card, even when your expensive cards are rotting in your hand, oftentimes they're inkable so you can play them. And the ones that are not inkable are often like very light additions to your deck, where you don't want to go like all 4 of them or whatever, because you can only play so many non-inkables before you start really having hiccups on turns like 4, 5, 6, where you're really trying to make sure that you can scale up with your bigger and badder characters as the game progresses, and your bigger and better interaction, like your Maui's, Dragon's Fires, and all the way up to Be Prepared. So, it's just it's a really niche balancing act you have to do. And the card that I think in Ruby Amethyst that's the most front and center for this as a talking point has to be Rafiki. What do you think about Rafiki?
So I am really high on rush effects, as you may have guessed just from me being so high on Pocket Watch for giving my other things rush. I have found that Rafiki is easily the best card you can have against the really aggressive Lilo decks, because all of the games break down to whether they have Simba or not. And when they have Simba, you have to have something that gets through that Simba for you not to fall really far behind. And Rafiki
especially if it's protecting 1-cost Lilo. The cheap double lore generators, like one cost Lilo, 2-cost LeFou, the quest for 2. Those are just like early heavy pressures that if you don't have some way to protect yourself from the Simba bodyguard, or at least just to check those on the turn where you play your response, like that's a full extra turn of questing if your thing doesn't have rush, that you might just fall so far behind that even if you start to actually be able to 2-for-1 them and catch up, you're still just like gonna get burned out by a lore generator sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I have still been playing Rafiki in basically all my Amethyst decks that aren't like super aggressive. Any of my more mid-rangey and controlling Amethyst decks all have Rafiki. I was trying Zeus for a while. Zeus has some upsides of it can trade with a Cusco, which is a very, very powerful card that I think is not actually seeing enough play at the moment.
Yeah, it's another uninkable though, and Emerald's got a lot of good uninkables, so it's like hard to find the balancing act. But I think 4 Cusco is like pretty solid.
Yeah, I think Cusco is pretty solidly the best Emerald card for me, and everything else kind of.
I'm not going to fight you on it.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Genie on the Job, but I'm not going to fight you over its utility versus Cusco.
I will say Genie on the Job is my favorite Emerald card, but I'm a realist, and Cusco I think is the best by a pretty good margin. But so Zeus can trade with Cusco, which is kind of hard to do actually with attacking characters, especially in the more mid-rangey decks.
Mm-hmm.
Gaston is really good for that, but if you're not playing Ruby, that's really hard to do. So Zeus helps a lot with that, and then Zeus also is a larger threat in your mid-range mirrors and control mirrors because he quests for 2 where Rafiki only quests for 1.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't oftentimes get your 2 cards out of your Zeus because he has 0 strength on defense.
Right.
So I have shifted back to playing Rafiki, and Rafiki is just bread and butter. We used to call him 2-for-1s in Magic. Rafiki is just a great card. He also is not super expensive, so he doesn't rot in your hand, even though he's uninkable.
Yeah.
And the trick with him, I think, is you just have to bite the bullet and play him a lot of the times, even if he doesn't have anything to rush into, and just keep playing to the board.
No, I feel you. I think one thing people try to do in any game that I play is they try to be cute, and they try to surprise the opponent. And oftentimes it's just better to be more efficient. And so even if you're not playing it to rush and challenge something on 3, you should still play it on 3 most of the time, just because it's a 3/3. It's it's a pretty decent sized body. It does quest. It also sings friends on the other side. And if you're playing another color like Emerald, it can also sing Mother Knows Best. So yeah, definitely just play your cards. Get them on the table.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's kind of the state of the metagame right now. We're looking forward to Chapter 2, but we still have plenty of tournaments coming up. And the one tournament that I really want to focus on and showcase is the Lost Boys Invitational, hosted by Apex Gaming. And this is an event that you yourself, Harlan, are going to be qualified for and playing in. And this event is going to be on October 20th weekend at the Apex Gaming home store in Caldwell, Ohio. Big shout out to Apex Gaming, not only for helping to organize and run the event, but for also just being cool people that I really like hanging out with and talking to. We're going to be having 16 players for this main event. 12 of them are guests that are invited, and 4 of them are winners that have won their seats. And the way that we're going to be doing this is on September 30th at the Caldwell, Ohio home store of Apex Gaming. We'll have an invitational qualifier where we're going to have $2,000 cash up for grabs on the line, as well as a qualification. And then we're going to be doing the exact same thing on October 14th, $2,000 up for grabs and a qualification. On Friday, 10/20, before the event itself, which starts on Saturday, 10/21, we're going to be doing 2 last chance qualifiers, and these last chance qualifiers will grant you entry into the 16-person $5,000 invitational. How's that sound?
That sounds super exciting. I am hyped to come back. Kind of out of retirement.
I know. I know you're itching to battle. Who have you been playtesting with so far?
So I haven't been doing a ton of focused playtesting yet. I am working with Brendan DeCandio and Mason Clark for the event. They are both qualified competitors like me, and we will be doing some focus testing as we get closer. But we're about a month out still at this point.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, we all have kind of shifted to professionally doing other things than just card games. So we don't have as much free time as we used to just, jam games on repeat. So a lot of my testing right now is still Pixelborn based. Usually just, queuing on the ladder, which honestly I think is really good, especially when you're trying to get more just reps with a deck in general. I think playing random matches is actually better than focus testing, because you're more likely to actually kind of trick yourself or trap yourself into an idea that may not actually be true focus testing too early.
Yeah, when I play test for any game, I like, Forged in Fire theory or whatever. You just want to run it up against as much stuff as you can, as quickly as you can. And it's way more important learning whether or not your cards do what you think they're going to do or what you want them to do than it is to really even track wins and losses, because the wins and losses will come based on how you analyze your data and how you figure out whether or not your cards actually work in the archetype that you're playing. And, I think that that's definitely something people really lock on to too much, is how do I beat Ruby Amethyst? And if I'm being honest, I doubt more than a handful of people actually bring Ruby Amethyst to the event itself for a couple of reasons. First off, the matches just take so long. You just take, the entirety of the time to play Ruby Amethyst, and that's not even counting like a mirror match. The mirror matches pretty regularly go to time, and that's something that we're working on trying to fix for the Invitational itself. Initial plans were to do best of one, where we're going to do best of one rounds with 30-minute rounds, but we got tournament guidelines from Ravensburger and Disney's Lorcana, and so we're going to try to follow those, and they recommend best of three, even though there's no sideboard. Not a big deal. We're just going to run it like that and hope for the best. The structure itself is something that I'm pretty excited about, and I've told you, and we have it in the Discord, and I'll pull it up in just a second. But let's see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, I think your baseline idea for it is that you have to get to 3 wins to make it into the second day effectively. If you 3-0, you immediately pass through.
Don't scoop me. This is my thing.
What?
You're
I'm trying to fill the time for you,
This
man.
is what editing is for, okay?
Oh, that's fair.
This is recorded. This is not a stream. Okay, so I have the thing in front of me, and this is the tournament structure. This is what I came up with, and everyone seems pretty happy with it. So on day number 1, we have 16 players. We're going to split them into 2 pods of 8. If you 3-0 your pod, you automatically advance to the top 8 into day 2. You don't have to play anymore. That means that 2 people will have perfect records after the first pod, and they'll advance to top 8. They'll be 3-0. The 2 players who 0-3 their first pod are also eliminated. That means that once you've hit that third loss in the first pod, you're gone. And that, that's rough, but 0-3 is 0-3, and I don't know too many tournaments where you start 0-3 and you still have a chance to win, and I think that it's fine to do that here as well. There's going to be 12 people in limbo after that. You're going to have 6 players with a 2-1 record, and then you're going to have 6 players with a 1-2 record. We're going to be splitting those into elimination pods of 6, where all the 2-1s will play 1 match, and all the 1-2 players will play 1 match. The 2-1 players that win will automatically advance to day 2. That means they've picked up their 3rd win. The losers will go down to an elimination pod. The 1-2 players, if they lose, they're out. They've gotten their 3rd match loss. They're done. And those players that win will be 2-2, and they'll battle the 2-1 players that lost in another elimination pod, where it's just going to be 2 elimination pods back to back. So essentially, you're right. The gist is you got to get 3 wins to advance to day 2. And if you take 3 losses, you're out. Now, the players that advance to day number 2, there should be, let's see, 8 players left starting on day 2. And what we're going to do is we're just going to have a normal single elimination top 8 bracket. And whoever gets to choose to be on the play will be based on when you picked up your 3rd win. So the 2-3-0 players will be 1st and 2nd seed, essentially going into day 2. The players who were 2-1 and then won the winner's pod will have the next tiebreaker, and so forth. We're going to do additional tiebreakers that we haven't figured out yet. It's not that big of a deal right now, but that's kind of where I'm at. Harlan, give me your honest thoughts of this structure, and do you think it's going to work out very well or not?
Yeah, I actually really like the structure. I've played in a few of these, kind of invite only, small tournament field, weird structured events. I really like the simplicity of you're trying to get to 3 wins before you get to 3 losses. If you get to 3 losses, you're out.
Yeah.
Super easy, super simple to digest. It doesn't have all these convoluted layers of I have to do this here and then this here. It does have a little bit of that, but it literally just breaks down to you have to get to 3 wins before you get to 3 losses.
Yeah, and the prize payouts for this are going to be pretty great as well. We have some sponsors that we're going to be announcing really soon that are going to help us pay for the prize pool and such. But first place up top is going to be $2,000. $2,000 at first. Second place is $1,000. Third and fourth each get $500, and then fifth through eighth each get $250 in cash. And everyone else, bottom 8 gets $100 store credit as a thank you. Have fun the rest of the weekend. Go buy some booster packs.
Are they going to have booster packs?
I hope so. We're hopefully trying to. We've been reaching out to Ravensburger, looking for a little help in terms of just getting physical product to give away for prizing, as well as to offer drafts and seal decks and things of that nature. We're trying to blow it up, man. We're really trying to do something really special, and we're also not just having the Invitational on 10/20 weekend. We're also going to have 2 large open events on those days as well. So even if you're not qualified for the Invitational, you can come hang out and play. We're going to have a $2,000 open on Saturday and a $2,000 open on Sunday as a celebration of Lorcana and our first big event as Lorcana organized play entities. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, it's going to be an awesome weekend. Make sure you come out to Ohio if you want to, meet the Lost Boys in person. See me crush a small field event like back in the day.
Yeah, it should be fun.
A great weekend.
I'm really excited to see what you actually end up bringing. I know that when it comes down to the last 2 weeks, you're going to just put your nose to the grindstone and just figure out your perfect 60. And I'm just ready to look at the decks because this is going to be a really tight field full of some really stone cold killers from the Magic world, including the reigning Magic World Champion Nathan Stoyer. How do you feel playing against someone of that caliber at this early on in the Lorcana organized play?
You know me, I'm always hungry for competition more than anything. Honestly, I've been meaning to reach out to Nathan about riding together because he lives a couple hours from me.
Okay, all right.
And it's a few hour drive. I'm not, super sweating anybody in the event. I'm coming in, with the goal and expectation that I absolutely can win the event. And what you were saying about grinding out the perfect 60, that's the beauty of Lorcana. I don't have to get it perfect. I can just ink the bad ones. That's true.
As long as you make sure you have at least 47 inkables, that's my line right now. That's a soft line. I've had a couple decks that was 15 non-inkables. Things got a little hairy when you started missing your 5th ink drop.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually super low on non-inkable cards in general. I absolutely would love to be playing 56 inkables if possible.
Yeah.
But I also have a couple decks built that are 42 inkables because I think you need the specific cards that I have as your top end to put away games.
A lot of that is a balancing mechanism, right? They literally designed some of these cards because they're able to push them pretty aggressively if they're not inkable. Mother Knows Best, I think, is actually the one that gets me excites me the most, right? If it were inkable, I think it would be a 10 out of 10, and it's already a 6 or 7 out of 10, and there's not very many ways that you can interact with your opponent in Emerald without, splashing into a different color. And, Mother Knows Best plus Genie on the Job just give you 2 really strong ways, but they're both uninkable as a drawback. And you see that in Ruby as well. Be Prepared is not inkable. Dragon's Fire is not inkable. And so if you're in situations where you just draw 2, 3, 4 of these cards out of your first 15 cards, sometimes that's going to really stifle your early development and make it so you don't even get to the point where those cards are actually good.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually personally think that Mother Knows Best would be totally fine at inkable, especially with Let It Go being inkable at 5 and everything.
I do think I think Sapphire needs some help. The more I've played with Sapphire, the more I'm like, Let It Go probably should be inkable.
Well, Let It Go is inkable.
No, I know. I'm saying like it should not be nerfed or whatever.
Help. I think Emerald needs a bit of the help too. And also, if you just compare the other two colors with a similar setup, which are Ruby and Sapphire to Emerald, Ruby has Maleficent, which is inkable, and Dragonfire that isn't. Mm-hmm. And then they have Sapphire has Hades that isn't, and Let It Go that is. And then Emerald has Genie on the Job and Mother Knows Best, and they both aren't. So I do think they probably could have let one come through.
Well, look, I do think it's set one, okay? It's set one. They're not going to knock it out apart balance-wise. And for one set, it's pretty darn good. I've been really seeing the points where they turn the knobs, right? Like, you can always find those cards where it's pretty clear, like, it was one cheaper at some point, and someone was like, no. Or it was inkable at some point, probably, and they're like, I think maybe we need to turn that off to make it a little bit weaker, because otherwise it's just an automatic 4 of, right? Like, and to me, that's one of the coolest parts about building decks so far with Chapter 1.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's going to move us on to our next and maybe final segment this week, and that's Card of the Week. All right, Harlan, what's your Card of the Week? No parameters or whatever, just what's your card that you're really jamming on right now?
It might be a bit of a blindside here because I haven't really talked about these decks or this card yet so far in this episode. But the card of the week for me, honestly, is Lantern.
Lantern? I actually really liked Lantern for accelerating out a very, very early Stitch Rockstar, you know.
Yeah, turn 3 Stitch Rockstar is incredible, especially when you're on the play. I would venture to guess that your win percentage when doing that is like 80% or something crazy, maybe higher. Yeah. But so Lantern, it enables those, quote unquote nut draws of, putting a Stitch in play on turn 3. But it also, one of the things that I have found that the Amber decks struggle the most with is when you don't have your hyper aggressive draw and you're playing an aggro matchup, you very quickly fall behind because your things aren't sized appropriately for challenges.
Right.
You're basically always trying to get out ahead and then defend against their challenges with your bodyguards and such. And you aren't really set up to play from behind. And Lantern is the card that kind of facilitates you being ahead on curve still so that you can get ahead and not fall behind in those games.
Yeah, the one thing I've been comparing it to is, so Amber is like very character dense in what you're trying to do, and so in a lot of ways, Lantern is just Amber's version of One Jump Ahead. And while One Jump Ahead's a song and this is an item, if all you're doing in your entire deck is playing characters, it's effectively the same thing. But on the turn where you play Lantern, you can still play a 1-cost character. And so in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a 1-cost accelerant instead of a 2-cost accelerant, because you often get the rebate on the turn you play it. And in other games, we compare that to like Mind Stone and Magic, and that's the type of thing where like you can play it on one turn and use it in the same turn. And then on the next turn, you still have that one size greater increase in resources.
Yeah, absolutely. That one turn of one ink production changes it from a good card to a great card very quickly and easily. And even when you're not playing it on turn 2 and playing a 1-cost card with it, you can play it on turn 3 and still play a 2-drop.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is very powerful. It's really easy to fit into curve and not feel like you are investing so much in this card like One Jump Ahead, where if you don't do that on turn 2, it feels like you never get to do it until it's already dead in your hands.
Right. I'm excited about some cards in the future that pay you off for playing songs. There's a new 7-cost Cinderella from Chapter 2 that whenever you play a song, you can challenge ready characters with the Cinderella. And
awesome.
That makes playing things like One Jump Ahead like a lot more desirable because they're great early, but they're also still functional later in the game. And we see a couple things like there's a 7-drop Mickey that cares about playing, the songs or whatever. But I just need more. I need more ways to make One Jump Ahead good. But the way that Amber makes Lantern good is by always having a character to play. And when you're always having a character to play, you're always getting full value out of the card. And when you play Stitch Rockstar or you splash for Steel so you can play Whole New World, that's what I'm doing in my deck that I love. And it's been gangbusters. And Lantern's been quite good in those decks. Obviously, a really bad draw late game because it's just not a character when you're trying to do like Stitch Rockstar stuff. But there's very little in comparison to it in the Amber color. And so if you don't play it, you just don't have access to that effect unless you're playing One Jump Ahead. And if you're going to do that, you might as well just play Lantern anyway. So
yeah, absolutely. It's a very powerful and unique effect that Amber doesn't have access to otherwise, and it has really impressed me recently, and that's why it's my card of the week.
All right. Well, my card of the week, and perhaps a controversial take, but I'm going to say Maui Hero to All. And as someone who has not played a ton of Ruby Amethyst, I have been getting slaughtered by Maui Hero to All. And I know that when I play the Ruby Amethyst mirror matches, it gets inked a bunch. But in every other matchup, it's just like your best card because it's killing a thing and surviving most of the time.
Yeah, it's such a unique card in that it kills something and then it's going to do it again. So they have to take their time to kill it themselves with another card.
Yep.
Just so you don't get to pick. It's pretty messed up. It's like if you are previously a Magic player, it's like Terminate Chainer Zedek split card.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down, it blows something up, and it's still going to threaten to blow something else up because it's enormous. The coolest thing about it, if you ask me, is that it can't quest, right? And for Maui, he's just stuck being a golden god in the middle of nowhere, being a complete Chad, but just has nowhere to go. And so whenever anyone shows up, though, he just wants to brawl. He wants to get them in there. And so to me, it's just like a perfect encapsulation of just like a wild god or whatever. So
yeah, do you know what your Maui says every time you want to quest it and you can't?
What does he say?
He says, "You're welcome."
You're welcome. All right, so that's my card of the week. Well, Harlan, we're going to call it a little early here because mostly I don't really have a whole lot else to talk about. We're really excited about the future of tournaments coming up, but so far it's been mostly just Ruby Amethyst and some various aggressive decks featuring, Simba Protector, and that's kind of where the metagame's at right now. And I'm looking forward to finding out some decks that can beat either of these. But we have another set on the horizon, and we're going to be spending a lot of our time in the coming weeks talking about these new cards. We did a video last week on the Lost Boys channel where we went over all the new cards that have been previewed thus far. But there's one new card that I want to ask you about before we go. Okay?
Oh, hit me.
It's I'm Stuck. Have you seen I'm Stuck?
I have seen I'm Stuck.
So this is a one-cost Amethyst card that's inkable, and it's got Winnie the Pooh as the titular character on the card, and he's stuck in a little hole trying to get some honey, a thing that happens to Winnie the Pooh Bear all the time. And the card itself is actually pretty sweet. It says target character cannot ready next turn. So if they've quested with it or played it as a bodyguard or whatever, you can stall it out for a turn so that you can catch up and find Maui Hero to All or some other way to answer their character. Or it gives you a full extra turn to ignore it if you're chaining off A-drop Elsas and questing for huge amounts of lore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the card right now, I don't think it would see a bunch of play. I think it's a card that you might play one, maybe two of, just because it's inkable. And when it comes up situationally, it'll be good. What I'm really excited for is if they make another character, like maybe a Winnie the Pooh, that does it on when it comes into play. That would be really cool.
Oh, cool. So
Yeah, you just kind of ice them.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. I know that the 3-cost Elsa that does exert an opposing character is quite good in some situations. On top of being a shift target for 8-drop Elsa, which is maybe the best finisher in the game. But did you see the Honey Wizard? They actually came out with a different Winnie the Pooh character for the next set too.
I've not seen the Honey Wizard.
5-cost Amethyst Inkable. It's a 5/5 quest for 2. It's enormous for the cost. Right? 5/5/2.
That's a big stat line.
And it's inkable. Everyone is like razzing it because they don't understand that it's just the biggest thing at 5 that exists in the game that's not Maui. And they think that it's just like a no abilities thing, but its abilities is this big.
Yeah, I think I think that's something that a lot of people have not explored yet or have figured out, is that stats matter.
Yes, they do.
Like we come from, at least you and I come from a world of Magic where it's like everything has to have a come into play effect or some crazy ability. But it's like Magic mixed with Hearthstone. You do just need raw stats to trade your cards for their cards.
Right.
And I think a card that you're really high on, Minnie Mouse, the 2/3, is an underplayed card. I think the 2-cost 2/3s are very good. I think
everyone hates them. Everyone sees Simba and they're like, "Oh yeah, Simba's good. It has bodyguards protecting," but they don't understand that just a 2/3 for 2 is good. Like there's no 3/2s for 2. Or sorry, maybe there's one 3-power character for 2, as far as I know, as well as Gaston, which can't quest. But like everything else is just a 2/2 or 2/1, and so the 2/3s just chew them up. And at the very least, you can start questing, and your opponent can't challenge them until they play something that costs more than 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the cards that I've seen pop up in a lot of Amber Steel mid-range decks that are very focused on, going longer and not being as aggressive as what you've been playing, they play 4 copies of Cerberus. It's a steel 5-cost 5/6 that quests for 1, and they play it just for the raw stats and how powerful it is with a card like Rapunzel.
It's slow Maui, baby.
Exactly. And, when there are these decks succeeding doing that, just because a card has raw stats, having a 5-cost 5/5 that quests for 2 is good if that's what other people are doing.
Yeah. All right. So as we get closer to the Invitational at Apex Gaming on 10/20, we'll be checking in with Harlan to check out his playtesting progression, see his week to week as he's figuring out new cards, new strategies that he might be bringing to the tournament. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Lost Boys. Big shout out to our newest member of The Lost Boys, Harlan Fear. Thank you so much for being here and talking to us about Lorcana, this game that we are all still new at and still bad at, but still getting better and learning and loving.
Yeah, I'm happy to be along for the ride.
Yep, and I want to say a big shout out to our sponsors, Games and Comics Paradise out of Fairfax, Virginia. Games and Comics Paradise is a full-fledged LGS that has everything you need for TCGs, from Magic the Gathering to Yu-Gi-Oh! To Disney's Lorcana. Make sure to check out gcparadise.com for all of your gaming needs. That's gcparadise.com. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Lost Boys podcast. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time. Until then, bangarang.
Bangarang.